All right, welcome, Michelle, Tina, and everybody else in Finance 444. This is the last session for this class, so congratulations, you've made it this far. I think most of you have made it this far in very good shape. I was completing all the grades from this last week earlier this evening, and I think most of you got an A or a B on the test last week. Most of you are getting, most of you who have turned everything into this point are getting a B or an A in the course, which is a great place to be at this point. We've got one final test. It's got a lot of the material that you've already seen before, as well as adds just one more chapter. It is comprehensive. There are 83 questions. You will have, I think, 3 hours to take it, so plenty of time, but give yourself plenty of time because there are a lot of questions. Tonight we'll go over the topics that you'll need to know. We'll cover every single one of them, so you'll be in great shape. Michelle, as far as I know, just flipping through it before the class, I didn't see any matching, but we'll go through each one of them. I'll let you know. I think you'll be in good shape, though. I don't think we've had any matching questions on the test to this point, so if I think they'll keep consistent with that, and you'll be in good shape. So most of you should feel very good about where you're at this point. We've got a handful of you who have not turned things in, and I assume I'm preaching to the choir here. Tina, Michelle, you guys turn things in very well. You're very responsible about getting all your work in. I do have a small handful of people who probably don't listen to the sessions, but if you are, please know that with a full week, that still gives you plenty of time to get enough work in to pass the class. And by enough work, I mean we want to try to get everything in to give yourself cushion to make sure that you can get through the course and not have to take it again. I would never, as an online student, enroll for any class without fighting, clawing, scraping, whatever I had to do. Whatever analogy you want to think about to get through it. It's too much money. It's too much effort to not pass the course. And I realize things come up, and family issues, and moves, and health issues, and all kinds of things can happen. Work issues, a lot of different drama can occur in one of these 4-week periods for these modules. But if you find yourself in that situation, you find yourself behind at this point, I would just strongly encourage you not to give up and not give in at this point. You've still got plenty of time if you plan your time out carefully, and if you just take one step at a time to get through it. Don't be discouraged. You can get it done. If you get stuck, reach out to me, reach out to Lindsay Haas, reach out to somebody else that's in the course, one of your classmates, and let's get through it. Let's pass the class. And like I say, congratulations to most of you who are doing very, very well in the course. A lot of B's and A's, a lot of A's, which is great. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this class that I'd love to give everybody an A. I don't have any quota as far as different scores or grades that need to be, accomplished in a class like this. And so please, do your best. And it looks like most of you are in great shape to this point. So there won't be any curveballs with the final other than the fact that it's longer. But if you did well on the midterm, or if you did well on this last test in week 3, you should be feeling confident and comfortable that you'll be in good shape for the final. And like I say, we'll give you the notes and topic areas that you need tonight before we're done. All right, so I alluded to earlier that I've got all the grading done to this point. Anything turned in on time to this point in the course should have a grade on it. So if you're missing any grades, or if I've missed something, please get in touch with me right away. Just zip me a quick email, and we'll make sure and correct that. Every once in a while, there's an error like that occurs, and I don't want to miss anybody's work. So I double check it at the end of the course. But if you're curious to make sure you know exactly where you're at with your grade, which I would be, at this point, and if anything's missing, make sure and get it in, or make sure and let me know if it's in and I just haven't got you a score on it. Okay? Tina, Michelle, any questions about coursework up to this point? Anything that either of you need from me before we get into slides tonight? Cover chapter 14 and then the test. Michelle, you're in good shape. Anything I can do for you, Tina? Okay. We'll hope that means that things are going okay. If either of you can think of any questions or concerns that you have, yeah, just send me something into the chat box, and we'll take care of it. Appreciate you guys participating. Appreciate both of you being regulars to the sessions. It adds a lot to the sessions. Other students that maybe can't be here during this time for one reason or another appreciate people participating, because it helps them get things answered that they have questions as well. They just sometimes can't be to these live sessions. So appreciate your participation, both of you, and you guys have been great to participate in these sessions. So ask me any questions that you have on Chapter 14 as we go through these slides. We're going to talk about retirement planning tonight, specifically different products and ways that you can plan for retirement. So that should be interesting and be very helpful going forward. All of us at some point will need to have retirement planning in place. It's not enough to, at this point, anticipate that Social Security will be sufficient for us or our children or grandchildren. And so it's very important, it's critical that we learn how to participate with employer plans, and even if we don't have employer plans, that there are other very tax-advantaged ways to save and invest for retirement. All right, so let's dig into Chapter 14, and then I'll cut it off about 15 minutes till the hour so that we can review topics for the test. So let's see here. First thing we always need to ask, Michelle, can you verify that we're moving slides here? Thank you. So, what are we trying to do? What's the whole point of retirement planning? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, we're trying to get things put together for retirement so that we have enough money to live and live comfortably, right? And accomplish the types of goals that we have, whether it be to travel or sit at home and watch TV and drink iced tea or whatever it is, hunt, fish. There's lots of different things that people aspire to do in retirement. Just visit family, go on service missions or something like that. There's just all kinds of things, and all of those carry some kind of price tag. Some of them a lot more than others, obviously. And so we want to make sure that we have clear in our mind what kind of goals we have for retirement. So some of the things that come into play are what age are we going to retire? And another one is, how much money are we going to need for retirement? Now, obviously, those are two critical issues that we need to answer for ourselves before we can really know what it is that we need to do as far as how much we need to save for retirement, how well prepared we need to be. And I would add that as a financial advisor and financial planner for folks, these two things change all the time. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll meet with a 20 or 30-year-old. We'll come up with a financial plan that involves them retiring at age 50 and wanting, $5 million to retire very comfortably. And, some of them actually could actually accomplish that. If we start early enough in their 20s or 30s and save enough, they'll be on track. And then over the years, things happen where they lose a job, business goes sour, if they do their own business, somebody gets sick, they get divorced, there's just all kinds of curveballs that life throws at us. And then we turn into a situation, Michelle, like you're alluding to, where all of a sudden, I'm meeting with them in their 50s, and instead of being in a situation where we can, retire early with plenty of money, we're in a situation where we're going to have to work until we can't work, right? And sometimes for some people, one of the things we have to be careful about, Michelle, that you've referenced, is a lot of people anticipate working until they die, but for various health reasons, a lot of times they just can't. Some people, in their 50s and 60s, obviously have an early end to their careers based on different health issues that they could be dealing with. So that's just one of those things that happens, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, to many people, and creates a situation where they have to retire early because of their health. Now, it's pretty easy if you can come up with what kind of lifestyle you want in retirement, how much money you need a month to live comfortably in retirement. It's pretty easy for a financial advisor to put that information into a calculator and just come up with exactly how much money you need at retirement in order to accomplish that income. That's pretty easy. The hard part is having the discipline to save enough to get to that point, but also having the discipline to make sure that you're whole financial house is in order. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people do a very good job saving, but they also are very good at spending and getting into debt. And so some people, when they retire at 55, 60, 65, 70, they have a pretty good retirement account, but they also have, they're very house poor, meaning they have a very large mortgage that they still pay on. They have car loans, very large car loans that they still pay on. They have credit card debt. They maybe even have their children's college education, that they've paid for and have loans on. So a lot of times, because they haven't paid down debt and tried to get 100% debt free by retirement, because of that, sometimes they, even though they've got a pretty good retirement, program, sometimes it doesn't work out because of the debt that they have. So no matter how much you save, you can always outspend your ability to save if you are not disciplined about how you pay down debt before retirement. And not having a mortgage in retirement is one of the keys to having a lifestyle that's enjoyable in retirement versus just trying to get by in retirement. Because that rent or that mortgage payment is a lot of times the difference of whether or not Social Security plus a retirement plan can make you comfortable. So just a good goal for all of us, to get on track, whether it's a 15-year or a 30-year mortgage, to make sure that by retirement that we're at least close to getting our homes paid off or something paid off so that we can have somewhere to live without a significant rent or mortgage payment at that point. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. All right. So biggest pitfalls in retirement: they start too late, put away too little, and invest too conservatively sometimes. Sometimes people just put all their money in a savings account because they're so fearful of taking risk. But the average savings account today at a bank pays 0.2%, not even 1% on your money. And at 0.2%, your money would not even double in 70 years of saving. It wouldn't even double in 350 years of saving, okay, if anybody could live that long. But if you were to get 8% returns from an aggressive mutual fund portfolio, your money would double every 9 years. Okay, so the difference of putting your money in the bank and being ultra conservative and getting 0.2% versus someone who's willing to take risk, knowing that their money will go up and down in the market, but willing to be patient with it long term, they on average over the past 80 years have doubled their money every 8 years. Okay, every 9 years, excuse me. So almost every decade, just under every decade, they've doubled their money. Where somebody who puts their money in the bank has never doubled their money in their lifetime at rates like we have today. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be conservative with some of our money. When we start talking about things like we did in the assignment earlier in this class, we had a case study about how much the person should have in their emergency reserves, right? And we gave feedback like 3 or 6 or 12 months worth of expenses or income. The emergency reserves probably should be in liquid short-term savings. It's not about trying to grow those dollars, although we'd like them to get interest. It's more about having them be perfectly safe and available if an emergency were to happen. But when we talk about retirement planning, we're talking about longer-term planning, right? And money that really shouldn't be needed for short-term uses. We should have an emergency reserve fund. So investing too conservatively can be a significant pitfall. And of course, the ones that are pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive, these are the ones you would have guessed, right? Just offhand, right, Tina and Michelle? Too little time and too little money saved, obviously, are two significant pitfalls, and ones that most of us at different times in our lives deal with, right? Because we're going through transition, we're going back to school, whatever it is, it becomes difficult sometimes to keep up with what we know we should be doing with retirement. Part of the thing that's exciting for me as an advisor and also instructor is all of you who are getting a degree are putting yourself in a position potentially from an employment standpoint to have a retirement plan and also have discretionary income, going forward that you can save, right, and pay down debts better. And so that should, this should be an investment, this degree should be an investment for you to be able to accomplish more from a planning standpoint. All right. So how do you determine income needs? You just estimate the needed retirement income that you'll need. You put that number together like we talked about. It's very easy in the retirement calculators. You can even do it online with free planning that is available out there. We talked about some of those sites last week on the discussion board, like Wealthfront, Investment Capital, Investor Capital, excuse me, Betterment, Mint.org, Mint.com, excuse me. Those all have calculators on them for calculating out how much you'll need in retirement. They're all, I shouldn't say they're all, most of them have free calculators for doing that. So getting that information isn't difficult. It just takes a little bit of effort, and then it's the harder thing is the discipline to actually do it. Then you go ahead and estimate how much retirement income you will have from pensions, from 401k plans that you already have, from Social Security, from inheritances, from any source that you potentially have income from. You calculate those out, rental property, whatever it is. You calculate those all up, you add them up, and then you determine what your shortfall is, right? The amount of money that you don't have that you were hoping to have, and that's how you determine how much more you need to save in order to accomplish that shortfall. Excuse me. So far, this should sound pretty straightforward, right? We just come up with how much money we need based on when we're going to retire and how much we need. Then we determine how much income we already have that's going to come. And then we determine the difference between those two. And whatever that difference is our funding shortfall, the amount of money that we need to do some additional planning and investing for. And really, when it comes to retirement planning for financial advisors, this is what it comes down to. It's not rocket science. It's not hard. It's not difficult. It's not intimidating. It's just pretty straightforward. All we're doing is punching in numbers, right, into software that help us determine for people what their shortfall is, and then how much additional savings that they would need to save each month or each year in order to accomplish the goal that they have. Okay? So all of you could do this just fine without a financial advisor. The financial advisor becomes important. Can be important as you discuss this as well. Don't let me underestimate the value of a planner in just this process, because sometimes people just don't even do it unless they have a planner. But you all could do this part of the process with online tools, free, with your own effort and time. That where a planner or an advisor really does bring value is accomplishing the investments needed to do the plan, right? To accomplish the plan, to succeed within the plan. And then helping the person who's investing, okay, to be consistent and to be dedicated and disciplined about accomplishing their goals. So like any coach, with a fitness coach or, a life coach or anything like that, their biggest role is to help keep us disciplined in trying to accomplish the goals and aspirations that we have. And that's similar for investment advisors as well. Okay. Here's just an example. Example of where income sources have come from in the years 1962 through 2008. You can see over a third of people's income after 65 on average has come from Social Security. Okay, and then people have asset income like rental property, they have pensions, they have earnings on their investments, and then a small sliver of other things that are available to them. Okay. You can see Social Security has stayed pretty consistent. Pensions have gone, they've actually stayed pretty consistent too. It's actually that asset income that's gone down the most, right? Those are things like rental property. So it's an interesting chart where people get their money from in retirement. So Social Security is pretty complex, but the simple explanation of what Social Security is basically an insurance policy issued by the federal government to all of us if we pay into it. Okay. The way we qualify is we have to have 40 credits, which requires us to work for 10 years of aggregate time in order to qualify for Social Security. But the actual benefit, how much money we get back, is the average of our income over 35 years worth of work. So you can qualify for Social Security by just working for 10 years. So if you're a non-working spouse, maybe you're the stay-at-home dad or the stay-at-home mom, and you don't work, a lot of people will say, okay, well, how many years did I work before I had children? I need to make sure that I get at least to that 10 years so that I qualify for Social Security before I get to the age of Social Security. Okay. But the other thing that's fairly interesting about Social Security is if you are a non-working spouse, you have what's referred to as a spousal benefit option, which means that you can take up to half of what your spouse has earned. So even spouses that, where there's two spouses that have both worked, a lot of times one spouse earns a lot more than the other. And because of that, they are able to take the spousal benefit that's half of their primary breadwinner spouse's Social Security, and that ends up being higher than the one that they qualify for through their own income. So you have both options. You can either take a spousal benefit, which is half of your spouse's income for Social Security, or you can take your own qualified benefit if it's higher. Obviously, you want to take the higher of the two, though. And full Social Security used to be 65. They've moved it up. They've bumped it up to help save Social Security from going bankrupt. Now you can start at 62 like you've always been able to do and with a partial benefit, but full Social Security for all of us on this session is probably 66.5 to 67. And it will probably be bumped up again if I were to guess because Social Security financially is struggling. Not that it can't make its payments, but just financially it's not going to be solvent if we keep continuing on the path we're on and we're to do nothing different over the next 20 or 30 years. Why is it not solvent? Tina, Michelle, any stabs at why Social Security doesn't have the money it needs to pay benefits long term? Sometimes you'll hear, like on a radio talk program or something like that Social Security is bankrupt and it's because our federal government spends too much. Okay. Reality is Social Security is a separate tax, right? It's a payroll tax out of our incomes. And it's a separate program from other programs, right? We don't take Social Security money and spend it on education or defense spending. It's a separate account. It's a Social Security trust fund. Okay. So, Tina, you are onto it right there. What I was going to say is it doesn't have anything to do with us spending the Social Security money on other things. What it has to do with is the fact that when Social Security was created, the average person's mortality was their late 60s. Okay, so think about this. The average person would retire at 65 and collect Social Security benefits for 3 to 5 years back then because our mortalities were shorter, right? People didn't live as long. Tack on top of that the demographics in the United States were that for every retiree, there were 4 to 7 people working, okay, to support the Social Security program with that one person that's in retirement that statistically is going to die within 3 to 7 years of starting because of how short mortalities were. So financially, fiscally, the Social Security program was very, very healthy financially when it first started because we had a lot of workers and we had people in retirement living very short lives. Now, both of those statistics have completely reversed over the past 30 years, 40 years. Now we're in a situation where demographics are working against us for Social Security, where the baby boomers are retiring. There are significant amounts of people retiring. Right now, we've got something like 2.3 or 2.4 workers for every retiree, or at least that's what it's going to get to here pretty quick. And that doesn't work. The numbers don't work out for Social Security to fund itself if there aren't more workers like there were back in the day. And that has to do with two things. People, first of all, are having fewer children, right? So there are fewer workers. But second of all, people are living a lot longer and more people are in retirement, right? Now, on average, we live 20 plus years into retirement. Okay, so Social Security has to fund us for 20 plus years, where back when it first started, it was only 3 to 5 years on average. So can you see just fundamentally why Social Security is challenged and why we keep talking about Social Security reform. Politicians love to talk about Social Security reform. They talk about it during their, when they're running for politics, and then of course once they're in office, they rarely do anything with Social Security. Why is that? Because the retirees or near retirees are the biggest voting bloc in America, and so politicians become very spineless when it comes to making changes to Social Security, because you don't want to mess with people's Social Security. You're going to lose a lot of votes. Okay, but reality is Congress and the president will be forced to make adjustments to Social Security because of the fact that these demographic changes, people living longer and fewer people working relative to retirees in this country. The more those statistics, go the other direction, away, against us as far as Social Security is concerned, the more it will be important for Congress and the president to make adjustments. Okay. Now, what I tell people as a financial advisor is retirees today and near retirees are probably have a very low likelihood of Social Security changing for them. The more realistic solution to the Social Security problem is taking the younger generation, people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, as well as even younger, and future children, taking the benefit and really scaling it back for them, upping the age significantly, or changing the benefit based on, an income test in retirement. If you're wealthy, maybe you don't get Social Security. There are all kinds of different tweaks that they could do, or minor changes that they could do to Social Security that would save Social Security for years to come, as far as, financially keeping it intact and keeping it solvent. Okay. But when it comes down to it, if you are still paying rent when you get to retirement, and if the only thing you have is Social Security is probably not going to be sufficient to cover basic expenses of life. You might be able to buy basic food. You might be able to pay your rent, but it will be so tight that if you have any financial emergencies with health care or with family issues or something like that, that can be devastating, and financially it can put you in a very, very poor situation. Where you don't have maybe enough to pay co-pays for medication, or maybe you don't have enough to buy food that healthy, food that keeps you healthy. These are real issues that seniors deal with every day. Thousands of seniors deal with that every day across America. They deal with the choice of necessities because of the fact that they don't have enough from Social Security to make things work. Their rent goes up, Social Security doesn't go up. Food prices go up, Social Security doesn't go up. Cost of gas, if they have a vehicle, go up, but their Social Security doesn't go up. They're on a fixed income, what we refer to as a fixed income. It makes it very, very difficult if we haven't saved and prepared for retirement beyond Social Security. And like I say, for the younger generation, it's not a matter of Social Security, taking 40% of our income like it has been statistically. I think it's much more likely that it just won't be there, or it won't be nearly the program that it is for the folks now. Okay. It'll be adjusted. And so I tell people, be a lot more aggressive about planning for retirement, just in case, and some people are anxious to even plan independent of Social Security, just to be careful. Okay. Any questions about the issues with Social Security or any problems with Social Security? Here's some of the information that we've already gone over: the 10 years or 40 quarters. The age 67 is the retirement age for most of us. Like I say, that'll probably be pushed out even older. There's other side benefits to Social Security, but they're really minor. Well, other than Social Security disability. Okay, Social Security disability is pretty substantial, but there are like death benefits for a spouse and surviving children that are pretty insignificant. Small death benefits that are so old because of when they came out. It's like a $550 benefit or $250 benefit for burial, which doesn't even pay for anything at this point when it comes to a funeral. Now, we're happy to get it, right? If something happens, it's nice to have that, but it's not realistic anymore as far as the size of the benefit. Now, Social Security disability is a very important and robust disability plan for those that are disabled permanently. And then also, if someone passes prematurely, there is a fairly decent survivor's benefit for dependent children. Okay, it's a per child benefit. It's not huge, but it really can make the difference of a widow or widower being able to make things work after a spouse passes. It's like $200 or $300 per child per month until they're 18. Okay, so how do we do this? We've talked a lot tonight about how we plan for it, why we plan for it, what we do to plan for retirement. We've talked about Social Security and how Social Security is kind of the core, or cornerstone piece of most people's Social Security, at least statistically. Selena is welcome. But how do the rest of us, how do all of us plan for retirement to add to and supplement what we know will be there for Social Security, but might not be enough, right? Like we just barely talked about. So there's employer-sponsored plans like 401ks and pensions, and then there's self-directed retirement plans like IRAs, and you could set up your own program to invest in rental properties or whatever it might be. So there's all kinds of different self-directed ways that you could do it in addition to employer plans. Now, employee plans have some advantages though. First of all, you could, let's go over some basic things first. So there might be participation requirements for your employer-sponsored plan. You might have to work full-time. You might have to work for a certain amount of years to get the match. You might have a certain age that you have to be. A lot of plans won't even allow you to participate before age 21. So if you're working and you're age 17 for somebody and you work full-time, you might get health care benefits, but you probably won't get 401k benefits. Okay, so there's different qualifying requirements for people to be a part of an employer-sponsored plan. There are two main types of employer-sponsored plans. One is called a defined contribution plan. This is where you as the employee decide how much you're going to put in, and then the employer might match some. So this is your traditional 401k plan where you put 3% in and maybe your employer puts in 3% as well. It's free money, right? That's 100% gain on your money right out of the gate because they're giving you 3% if you put 3% in. It's matching dollar for dollar. So if I put $50 in and that's 3% of my income, my employer will match $50 and put another $50 into my account. I tell people it's usually a very silly choice, okay, financially, to ever not get the match from your employer. Okay, it's free money. It's a free program. They're giving you free money. There's absolutely no reason not to participate, at least to the amount where they give you free money. Okay, and that's very common in a defined contribution plan. Now, there's also what we call defined benefit plans, and this is usually what we refer to as a pension plan. And very few businesses now, very few employers have pension plans. It used to be that everybody worked, for a plant or for a manufacturer. They worked for them for 30 or 40 or 50 years, and then the company paid a pension plan, right? In addition to Social Security, they receive a pension. Government employees, some banks, military personnel still have pensions. Teachers, a lot of teachers still have pensions. And pensions are very uncommon in the private sector. It's almost entirely in the public sector that we have pensions still. And even in the public sector, pensions are under high amount of scrutiny and are actually going away in many cases. Why is this? Because defined benefit plans or pensions put a lot of pressure financially on the institutions that sponsor them. So most companies have already gotten out of the business of offering pensions, but even government entities are starting to get out of pensions because it's too much liability on government to fund these pensions. Okay, and these guarantees of income for people's entire lives. So if you have a pension, good for you. They're very uncommon now unless you work for government. If you don't have a pension, that's more common. But most companies now, if they don't have a pension, they still offer a 401k plan, as long as you qualify, with those different qualifications that we talked about a little bit earlier. So defined contribution versus defined benefit, more common is defined contribution at this point. All kinds of different defined contribution plans and supplemental plans. And then you get to self-directed plans where you have Keogh plans, SEP plans, IRAs. You've actually got about a dozen different types of plans that you can do if you're not participating within a 401k. Okay, so if your employer doesn't have a 401k plan that they offer to you and you can't participate, the government has set up many, many different plans for folks who are self-employed or don't have access to a 401k in order for them to achieve a retirement plan. However, it's a little more difficult for them because they have to set it up themselves, right? Where through work, it's a lot easier to just have your payroll put money in each month into your 401k and then get free money from your employer. Folks who don't have a 401k, that nobody's going to give them free money, right? No one's going to match their retirement savings. So they're already starting kind of on a foot down from the folks who have the free money as far as a 401k with a match. But the government has tried to make up for that by giving you a lot of options, and also that are very tax efficient, and also giving you more flexibility in how much you can put into these plans. So they're trying to make up for some of it, but the bottom line is, if you have a company that'll give you free money through a 401k, that's a real benefit. That really is a nice benefit. Pensions are a really, really nice benefit. Usually it's not something we look at when we're looking between employers and which one to choose, but I would strongly encourage you, especially as you get your degrees and move on, to strongly consider benefits and the benefit package, and especially retirement, either a 401k or pension, and how well the company funds those plans for you. As I would encourage you to view them as a significant part of the benefits that you could get by going to one place over another. Most of us are just conditioned to say, if you'll pay me 20 more cents an hour, then I'm going to go to you, right? But when we start looking at salary jobs and post-graduation jobs, it becomes much more important to look a little bit beyond just the dollars and look to how robust the benefits are, because benefits, can be a significant part of your total compensation package. Okay? We've got deductible IRAs, we've got Roth IRAs. Let me just take just a second to talk about Roth IRAs, and then we'll wrap up the slides and we'll get to what you need to know for the test. But a Roth IRA is one of the most unique and tax-advantaged ways to save that's out there. And why is that? Because a Roth IRA allows you to put money into an account, grow that money 100% tax-free, and pull that money out in retirement 100% tax-free. There's not another program out there. There's not another system out there without strings of some kind, like insurance has strings, different strings attached to it. There's not another program that doesn't have strings, like insurance or otherwise, where you can grow your money 100% tax-free, use it for your own retirement at your own discretion, and never pay tax on any of the growth. Okay, so let's go back to our example of you being able to double your money every 9 years if you're getting an 8% average, which the market has gotten over the past 80 years. And let's say today you put $10,000 in the account. Let's say today you're age 30, okay? And you inherit $10,000 from your great-grandma passing away. So instead of just going and blowing your money on the next car, you decide, you know what, I'm gonna create a legacy with this and invest it for my future. So you put that $10,000 into a Roth IRA, okay? And with that $10,000 in a Roth IRA, you invest it in a mutual fund portfolio, expecting to get about 8% a year. And let's say you do, like you have over the past 80 years. So to make things easy, instead of going every 9 years, let's just say every 10. So that's more conservative, right? You're going to double your money every 10 years. So when you go from age 30 to age 40, that goes from $10,000 to $20,000, and you think, oh, that's great. Then when you go from 40 to 50, you go from $20,000 to $40,000, and you think, oh, that's great. And then you go from 50 to 60, and you go from $40,000 to $80,000, and you think, oh, this is getting pretty good. At 70 years old, you have $160,000. You started with 10, you have 160 in a Roth IRA, and now you want to use it for retirement, and you can use all 160,000 that you never paid tax on 100% tax-free. Okay? So you grew your money from $10,000 to 160, and you never had to pay a dime of tax on it. Roth IRAs are the most tax-efficient vehicles for retirement savings that there are. And there are some limitations on how much money you can put into Roth IRAs, but I would strongly encourage all of you to consider, if you don't have a retirement plan through work, or even if you do, you can supplement that by putting a few bucks into a Roth IRA each month. find some way to systematically or automatically put a few dollars into a Roth. And I say a few dollars, I mean $50 a month or $100 a month, something, so that you can begin, saving for retirement. Or consider taking like a tax return and taking a few $1,000s from a tax return and placing it into a Roth IRA to fund it. So if you ever get a windfall of some kind, and I mean windfall in any way, just an insurance payment, a settlement, a inheritance, just anything where you get a chunk of change all at once. Most people, that's a tax return. But consider taking $1,000 or $2,000 and putting into a Roth IRA for your future and investing it, right? We can't just sit it in the bank because it's not going to grow like the example I just gave. But if you'll put it in a mutual fund portfolio, growth portfolio of some kind, and just relax and let it go, and be patient with it, you'll on average double your money every 10 years, every 9 years if you average 8%, and that can really grow into something pretty significant by the time you get to retirement. Plus, it's growing 100% tax-free. So I encourage you to research out Roth IRAs if you're not familiar with them, how to start them, what to do with them. If you've got any questions, let me know. But a Roth IRA could be a significant help, when it comes to supplementing your retirement income and having a more comfortable lifestyle in retirement. Okay. So those are some retirement plans and some different options that you have. Let's get to the material you need to know for the test. But before we do that, any questions, concerns, confusion about any of the information that we've covered so far? Everybody has gone to sleep. Salinas, you just got here. Are you still up and awake? Good. We have one person still alive. That's excellent. The rest of you will have to, listen to the session later in order to get the information for the test. All right. So let's get to the material. As I mentioned earlier, this is a comprehensive test. It's got 83 questions. They're all multiple choice or true false. And a lot of them are repeat questions from prior tests. So I'll just throw that out there. A lot of them are just information from previous sections that we've learned about. Okay, so I'll give you the topics, but just know that if it's a topic you've heard before, it might very well be because the information is going to be a repeat question. Okay, so good to review briefly, how you've done on past tests before you get to the test, because that information might be helpful. All right. Number one on the test. Number one on the test, you want to understand what we're referring to, what the definition of market risk is. What is market risk? Just know what the definition basically of market risk is, and you'll have number one on the test right. And you'll be off to a great start and feeling good about things. Number two on the test. Number two on the test, you're going to want to understand what total return, how we come up with total return. You'll recall there are at least two components to total return, but you'll want to make sure you understand what the book has to say about what total return is before you get to number two on the test. Number three on the test, you want to know the definition of desired rate of return and expected rate of return. So this is a repeat question. I think we saw it in week 1 and week 2, but you want to understand the difference between desired rate of return and expected rate of return for number 3 on the test. Number 4 on the test, once again, a question about total return. How do we calculate total return? What is involved in total return? Okay, there are different components of total return. What are those? And if you know those, you'll get number 4 right on the test. That is another repeat question. Number 5 on the test is you want to understand what the risk-free rate of return is and how we usually measure it. What is the risk-free rate of return and how do we usually measure the risk-free rate of return at any given point? And you'll get number 5 right on the test. Number 6 on the test, you'll want to know a little bit about what common stockholders are, how they're different from preferred stockholders, how they're different from bondholders. Know the basic differences between common, preferred, and bondholders, and you'll get number 6 right on the test. Number 7 on the test has to do with dividends and interest payments. And you want to know the difference between, once again, common stockholders, preferred stockholders, and bondholders as it pertains to who is the priority interest payment. Who gets the priority interest payment before who? Okay. There's a priority pecking order to interest payments and dividends. How is that between preferreds, common stock, and then bond holders? Number 8 on the test, want to understand what it means to be a qualified investor. Okay, you've got retail investors that can invest in bonds, stocks, mutual funds, and then you've got qualified investors. You may be required to be a qualified investor in order to invest, for example, in hedge funds or real estate investment trusts or private equity. Okay, so these are more selective types of investments that we usually look at as investments for rich people. Okay, so what does it mean when we talk about qualified investors, and what can they invest in maybe differently than your general public? It's a repeat question as well. Number 9 on the test is a stock dividend question about taxation. We've had this question a couple times, but how are cash dividends different than stock dividends as far as taxes are concerned? How are stock dividends different than tax dividends as it pertains to taxes? Then it talks about cash dividends on number 10, which is another repeat question, and how they're taxed. You remember we had the discussion a few weeks ago about bonds, bond prices versus interest rates. We talked about how they're inversely related, meaning when bond prices go up, interest rates go down. When interest rates go down, bond prices go up, right? They react inversely or opposite from one another. Okay, so keep that in mind for the test. Number 12 on the test, number 13 on the test, and number 14 on the test are calculations regarding yields. Okay, regarding yields. So pretty sure they're all repeat questions, but you'll just want to refresh, how to calculate a yield. So if they give you income and price and increase, okay, so they'll ask you something like, what is the total return, or what is the yield on this investment? You'll need to be able to calculate that out. Number 15 on the test is just, once again, the definition. You'll need to know the definition between common stock, preferred stock, and bonds. You get number 15 right. Number 16 on the test is a stock dividend question, just a real easy calculation about stock dividends. It's a repeat question. Number 17 on the test is the frequency of how often cash dividends are paid on stocks. So what is the most common frequency of cash dividends on common stocks? You'll want to know that before you get to the test. Number 18 on the test, you'll want to understand the basic formula for measuring book value. So it's a very simple formula. You'll want to be able to input information from 2 different problems, 18 and 19, into that formula in order to get book value. Okay, so you want to be able to calculate book value. Number 20 on the test is a question about profitability of a stock. What metrics, what information is used to determine the profitability of a stock? That'll help you get number 20 right on the test. Number 20 right on the test, 21 on the test, excuse me. You want to know what the PE ratio is. PE ratio. We had a question from this last week's assignment on the PE, and some of you got it wrong, looking at the wrong thing. We didn't want to, you don't express PE ratio in, what am I trying to get it? In decimal form. PE ratio is always expressed in fraction form, okay, or in whole number form. So if the PE ratio is 20, or if the PE ratio is 14, that's the PE ratio, okay? It's not 0.2 or 0.3 or something like that. It's usually a whole number, okay? PE ratio, what is it? What does it reflect in a stock? Number 22 on the test is a question about closed-end mutual funds. So just the basics of closed-end mutual funds will get you that one. 23 on the test. You'll want to understand how mutual funds work. Just the basics of mutual funds we talked about a little bit last week, if I'm not mistaken. Number 24 on the test, we talked about exchange traded funds or ETFs, how they're different or similar to closed-end mutual funds. Okay, you want to understand similarities and differences between mutual funds and ETFs. Number 25 on the test, you want to understand fees, costs associated with closed-end mutual funds. How do the costs work on closed-end mutual funds? Number 26 on the test, you'll just want to know, again, the basics of mutual funds. Why do people invest in mutual funds? Usually it's for professional management, diversification, and economies of scale. We talked about how people want professional management. They want it at a low cost, right? And they want diversification, and mutual funds can accomplish all those things beyond what an individual stock will do, okay, or a pool of individual stocks unless you've got a lot of money. Number 27 on the test, you want to understand what some different names, synonymous names for mutual funds are. Okay, there's some different names that you can be used for mutual funds other than mutual fund. You want to understand how we value, what's the name of the value we place on the daily value of a mutual fund. I'll give you a hint. Its acronym is NAV. Its acronym is NAV. And you can put together the rest for the test on number 28. But that's the daily value. It's recalculated every day at the end of the day after the market closes. Usually happens about 4 o'clock our time in Mountain Time. Okay, when we get the value adjustment for mutual funds. And there's terminology we use for that value. So what is that? Well, the acronym is NAV. I already gave it to you. That's number 28 on the test. You'll need to know the full name of that. Number 29 on the test, different reasons the book has to say for using mutual funds. You'll want to understand that. We've talked about 3 of them, but you'll want to know what the book has to say about why people use mutual funds. Number 30 on the test, there are different types of mutual funds, and you'll want to understand basically what those different categories of mutual funds are. So there's like money market funds and balanced funds. You want to understand what the differences between those different mutual funds are. Number 31 on the test is another question about that. So basic categories of mutual funds, what they mean. And you'll get one right. Number 32 on the test is a tax question. Basically, it's asking you about our federal income tax, whether or not it's regressive or progressive. We talked about this a few weeks ago. You'll want to make sure and review that if you can't remember what our federal income tax is, whether or not it's progressive, flat, or regressive. Number 33 on the test is our discussion question from a few weeks ago about avoidance versus evasion on taxes. Really straightforward and easy if you recall what we talked about on the discussion board. Number 34 on the test is marginal tax rate versus average tax rate. Make sure you understand those two concepts. Average tax rate is always, by default, average tax rate is always lower than the marginal tax rate. Marginal tax rate is always higher on average than the average tax rate because marginal tax rates by default that are progressive become higher as you earn more. But it doesn't change your overall taxes, it just changes the taxes for the amount above a certain threshold. So our marginal tax rate system in the United States means that when you exceed certain levels of income, then you start paying a higher amount of tax on that number above that threshold. Not on your total amount, just the amount above that certain threshold. So let's say you make $550,000 a year, and let's say the top bracket is anybody who makes money above $450,000 a year is going to pay 39.5% taxes, or 39.6. But they only pay 39.6% on taxes above 450. So that 100,000 between 450 and 550 for that person is what they're paying 39.6% on. Everything else they're paying a different marginal rate on, right? Each segment of money that you make is taxed at a different rate all the way up until you get above 450, and then everything above that is at 39.6%. Okay? So marginal tax rates versus average tax rates, they're different, right? Average tax rates on average are lower. Marginal tax rates are on average higher because they go up as you earn more. Where average tax rates, yes, they go up, but they're still going to be lower because you have the low ends of your income that don't get as much taxation. If I've just made that clear as mud, just go back and read a little bit about marginal versus average tax rates before you get to the test. All right. Number 35, you just want to know, as far as tax revenue is concerned to the federal government, where does most of that tax revenue come from? Does it come from death taxes, sales taxes, estate taxes, tariffs on foreign exports, income taxes, payroll taxes? Where do most of the IRS receipts come from? Which type of tax? You want to know the definition of gross earnings. Gross earnings, what is that defined as? Number 37, gross income, gross earnings. Another question on that. So just make sure you understand what we're talking about. Number 38, you want to know the definition, just the definitions between refund and liability when it comes to taxes. Pretty straightforward. Liability is what you owe, refunds what you get back, right? So pretty straightforward for number 38. Number 39 on the test. Let's see here. You want to know a little bit about income shifting tax strategies. Income shifting tax strategies as it pertains to gifts, what the book has to say about gifting. When is it helpful to shift taxation to a younger generation? What ages is it applicable? Okay. Number 40 on the test. The difference between short-term types of savings, right? We've got checking, savings, money markets, CDs. You want to know what the book has to say about which one of those would pay us the highest interest. Okay. And pretty intuitive, right? So savings usually pays more than checking. Money market and CDs usually pay more than savings or checking. Just keep that in mind for the test, and you'll get number 40 right. Number 41 on the test. You'll want to know some different names for types of bank accounts like savings, checking, demand deposits, different names for those different types of accounts. I think we've seen that question before, but just make sure you understand what those are before you get to number 41 on the test. Number 42 on the test is rates of return on liquid assets. So long-term assets usually have higher rates of return than short-term assets, right? And liquid assets are usually short-term assets. So by default, liquid assets are usually lower interest. Okay, keep that in mind for number 42 on the test. You'll get one right. Number 43 on the test, you want to understand what is covered by FDIC and what is not at a bank. So if you invest in mutual funds through a bank, you're not going to have FDIC. FDIC is for bank deposits, checking, savings, money markets, CDs. Those are FDIC insured at a bank, not mutual funds. Okay. Number 44 on the test, you want to understand which of a set of options through different bank type accounts would pay interest versus which ones would not. Okay, number 45 is similar, just identifying which type of account among a list of different types of banking accounts would pay interest or would not pay interest. Number 46 on the test is has to do with interest rates and a concept that we've already talked about, which is shorter term deposits like shorter term CDs have lower interest on average than your long-term CDs. Longer the deposit, usually the higher the interest rate that they're going to give you. Number 47 on the test is a question about personal use assets. So you'll just want to know what some examples of personal use assets are. Number 48 on the test is another automobile question. 49 is an automobile question. 50 is an automobile question. 51 is an automobile question. You want to know what the book has to say about automobiles, automobile ownership, financing, because you're going to answer a lot of lease and car ownership questions, okay? So let's see here. I'm still seeing automobile questions, and I'm on number 58 now. So you can see there are 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 questions. A lot of questions on automobile buying and selling. leasing, terms of automobile buying and selling and leasing. Still looking at a lot of different car, loan, and leasing questions. Okay, I'm on number 70 on the test now. So there are almost 20 questions about automobile sales, automobile purchasing, automobile financing, automobile leasing, automobiles as an investment versus sinking asset or liability. You're going to want to know what the book has to say about buying and selling cars, okay? Not like you want to become a dealer, a car dealer, but just you as a consumer of vehicles, right? Having an automobile, either leasing or owning one. You're going to want to know all that the book has to say about that because there are almost 20 questions about that alone. You'll want to know what the term condominium refers to. Most of you know what a condo is. So this part of the test is kind of changing to home ownership from your car and automobile ownership questions. So let's see, home mortgages. Here's another auto question, auto buying, used car versus new car, what the book has to say about that. Okay, and then we get to 80. So all these questions that I just referred to are all either about buying and selling homes or buying and selling cars. Most of them are about automobiles, which is the most common thing that you and I will be involved in as far as financing something. We don't buy and sell homes nearly as often as we have to buy and sell cars, potentially, or lease cars. Okay, so you're going to want to know what the book has to say about those. Number 80 on the test is a market risk question again. So what is the definition the book uses for market risk? And you'll get that one right. 81 on the test is a question about long-term debt and financial risk of a company. So when we talk about different risks, we talk about financial risk. That's like their debt, you know, and how well they can service the debt that they have. And so a big financial risk would be if they had a lot of debt, right? Companies that have low debt or no debt pose little or no financial risk because they won't go out of business if they don't have any people that they have to pay bills to, right? So keep that in mind for number 81 on the test. 82 on the test is purchasing power risk. It has to do with inflation. You want to understand what purchasing power risk is. And number 83 is interest rate risk. Okay. You'll want to know what interest rate risk is and the fact that interest rate risk is much more important to bonds than it is to stocks. Why? Because of that concept that we talked about earlier tonight as a review on the test, but also talked a little bit more in detail about a few weeks back about how interest rates and bonds move opposite of one another. So interest rate risk impacts your bonds because if interest rates are rising, your bond prices are probably going to go down and you're probably going to lose money. Okay? So that's number 83 on the test. Okay, so as far as new information beyond what we've covered to this point in the class, be careful that you go to the book and see what the book has to say about buying, selling, leasing cars, and buying and selling homes. Okay, it's not a lot of information, but you'll just want to make sure and read up on that information before you get to the test because that's the bulk of the new information for this particular test. Okay? All right, so we went over time a little bit tonight. Any questions or concerns before we wrap up tonight? Salinas, even you are asleep after, you know, that kind of review where we just burn through 83 problems worth of material. But anything that I can do for any of you before we wrap up tonight? Okay. Michelle, Tina, thanks for being here. Salinas, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you in the next mod. But if not, good luck to all of you. I hope the class wraps up very well for all of you, that all of you do well. And have a great evening. Thanks, Tina. Have a good one.